All right, good evening, everyone, and welcome to day 18 of our freelance consulting training. So today is a very important topic that I would have expected that as many people would be interested in wanting to have this information. And I'm hopeful that even though not all of them will be here live, but as we have this session and we record, we're going to have a lot of people who will be interested in consuming this very important information because it is one of the most critical areas when you are considering to venture into freelancing or to even offer any kind of service that is digital based or that is service oriented, basically, because sometimes it's very difficult to be able to factor in the cost of intangible service when you want to buy a bottle of water, when you want to buy a a snack, or you want to buy any kind of machine you want to utilize, you will find out that it's easy to have a price tag on it. And sometimes you find that that similar product will be sold at similar prices in other parts of the country or in any other location, basically. But when you want to buy services, when you want to buy intangible products, sometimes it's very difficult to be able to price it or say exactly how much you will price it. And it's even more difficult for entrepreneurs, for startups, for freelancers who are just starting. When you're just starting, it's difficult because you're also not sure how people are going to consume your products. You're also not sure if it's going to be valuable enough, if they're going to get tangible value for the service. There's so many things that would make you not be sure how exactly to price your products. So deciding on fees can be very complex. So the question, how much should I charge, is a very important question that most entrepreneurs will ask. They will always ask, how much should I charge?
Sorry, ma'am, I can't hear anything. I don't know if it's from your side.
Oh my God, what happened? You haven't heard anything since I started?
No, to a large extent.
The last thing we heard
About
was deciding on your pricing.
Okay, so when I switch to this next page, you didn't hear me say anything, right?
No.
no, ma'am.
Okay, that's sorry about that. I apologize for that. Okay, so like I was trying to say, deciding on how much to charge for your service is a very dicey and complex issues for most startups, for most entrepreneurs who are going to be offering especially service-oriented products. Because like I said, when you are buying a product off the shelf, you kind of have an idea how much it is because there's a price tag on it. The tendency for that same product to be about the same size or about the same price or similar price in other location is also there. But when you are pricing or when you're trying to provide a service for a client for a service that is intangible, it can be a little confusing and complicated. And sometimes you will find that most entrepreneurs have problems with either undercharging, which is a common challenge, or even overcharging or overpricing. Because sometimes when you also overprice, it becomes a challenge for you to sell a handful number of the products or the service. And so that also will pose a challenge to the growth and profitability of your business. So it is important to get this part very correctly. It is impossible for me to say that in the beginning you will not have the challenges, you will not make the mistakes, or things will not go wrong. But then, as you know some of this information, it will guide you as to how to price your services or price your products more confidently, that you can be sure that the value that the people get is exactly the equivalent to the kind of money or the kind of fees that they are paying. So like I said, this is a question that most freelancers and startup entrepreneurs struggle with the most when they're starting out. And the answer to this question matters, because if you get this wrong, you will constantly struggle to get by, and especially when you're undercharging, like I said. I also struggled myself. And in fact, some of us, when I started to become an entrepreneur so many years ago, I was even offering certain services for free, just like I'm doing now, because sometimes also it will make sense for you to even, it depends on the service though, because not all service you can offer for free. Services that depends more on your intellectual capacity and does not require too much expenses, or maybe it just takes your time and the resources that you already have. Yes, there are certain degree of services that you can offer for free, but there are some that you cannot. When I started to offer study abroad services about 12, if not 13 years ago, I used to offer the services for free until somebody told me, hey, what are you doing? This thing that you're offering for free can actually be a business. A senior friend of mine then called me and said, hey, every time I call you, you are in the airport, you are picking somebody, you are doing this, you can turn that into a business. And when I heard that, it made a lot of sense to me. But even at that, when I still started and I wanted to start asking people to pay me fees for the service, it was still difficult. So at the start, all of us, all of you, you will find that you are undercharging so bad that you're wondering what you're doing. And like I said, is normal. But again, figuring out how to price your service is one of the most important things that you will need to do right as an entrepreneur and as a business owner. And I'm here to give you some tips that would help guide you to sit down and, do some writing or do some penning down in terms of figures, in terms of calculations, in terms of factoring in all the components of the services that you offer, to give you a clear idea as to how you can go about charging or pricing, or setting fees for your service. So the number one thing, I'm going to give you a couple of tips, and it is not a one-size-fits-all. The reason is because even for this training, I noticed that we attracted all sorts of people, and I'm sure that in our subsequent trainings, maybe after the second batch, we will not be able to attract all kinds of people anymore, because I noticed that the solution that we're providing is not serving all spectrum of people. Because again, for freelancing, majority of the information and the resources we provide are supposed to be for people who are providing service-oriented business. But I noticed that I have people who are saying, I am a fashion designer, I make shoes, I sell stones, I sell that. Basically what we do here, freelancing, is mostly 90% of the time a service-oriented business. Whether you want to offer tutoring services in your community, you want to offer cleaning service, you want to offer travel consultancy service. Basically, freelancing has a lot more to do with service-oriented business. In fact, for the most part, it has more to do with digitally delivered service. So most times you find that freelancers are expected to work remotely. They might not have physical interactions or interference with the clients. They can be anywhere and they can work from anywhere and offer value to their clients. But then again, there are other segments of freelancing. There are other segments of freelancing also that you can still offer and still get to interact with your clients real time, but they still have to be service oriented. So going forward, we might not be able to accommodate people who are product based, because some of the information we're talking about here might not be able to serve that market, basically, because this is basically a freelance training. So some couple tips I'm going to give to you is not going to be a one size fit all. You're going to be able to take one or two and choose the ones that work for you. And in some cases, some tips might work. And in some cases, you might have to use another strategy, basically. So the number one thing you want to do, and this is a common thing, though some people who are professional freelancers will ask you not to do this, but for startup freelancers, I strongly recommend that you can do this. You can take your current job in case you have a job, or if you lost your job, or even if you don't have a job, there's an ideal job that you have in your head that you know that you qualify for, that you deserve. Take that job, sit down and look at the probability of the kind of salary that that job would have. So if, for example, you think that my skill, my talent, my expertise can get me a job that should pay me about 500,000 in a month, or 300,000, depending on you. You know where you are. You know what your skill is. You know what your expertise is. Take that anticipated salary, but be realistic. Don't be overly ambitious. I am an ambitious person. Sometimes I like to be a little extra ambitious, but you who want to be ambitious, you have to be sure that you have the energy to match that ambition that you have. But if not, be as realistic as possible. Now, if you have taken that salary, divide it by 30 and decide on how much you think you should make on a daily basis, on a weekly basis, okay? And then, or if you want to decide that you want to do it on a monthly basis too, it's up to you. But I would usually request that you do it on a small compartment basis so that you can have certain daily and weekly targets to be able to meet, to ensure that you achieve that goal, that revenue goal realistically. So if you take, for example, you're being paid, or you assume that you should be paid 500,000. If you divide that by 30, how much would that be? Whatever the unit of the cost that will be, then you can now make a projection to say, on a daily basis, if I'm going to get clients that I'm going to be working for, this is how much I can charge them on a daily basis to be able to match up with what my monthly revenue will be. Now, this is the startup recommendations to make for people who are just starting up, okay? One of the things you should also try to do, though I still recommend that you try not to be overly ambitious in the beginning, is to note that if you are going to be working in that full-time job as an employee, right, there are going to be some certain benefits that you might get. Benefits like insurance, benefits like vacation, like allowances for leave, and a couple of things. You might also want to factor that in, because if you're working full-time, there is a possibility to get that. But as a freelancer, you and I know that you don't get that. So if you want to factor that in, probably because you're trying to aim higher, it will make sense for you to think about that, okay? But other than that, take 500,000. Let's say, for example, it is 300,000 a month. 300,000 divided by 30, that's about 10,000 every day. So it means that if you are deciding to offer any service to any client on a daily basis, the average cost for your service per day, or depending on the number of hours per day, should be 10,000. So if, for example, say you decide that you want to offer a tutoring service, you want to teach students, or you want to even have just one or two clients where you are going to their houses in case you don't have a location where they can come to you. You want to go to their houses to teach two clients every day. Maybe the first one you go at 2, or you go at 3 and close at 5, and the second one you go at 5 and close at 7. Is up to you. You can choose to say, okay, on a daily basis, I can take 5,000, or I can take, however, it's up to you. Or you can say on a weekly basis, this is what I'm going to take, or on a monthly basis, what I'm going to take. And then if you're also going to consider to say, you're going to have multiple clients per time, maybe they're coming to you, and maybe you're looking at having 10 clients per time, you can now say, okay, each student pays me 10,000 naira every month. And if there are 10 of them, 10,000 every month by 10, that's 100,000, right? So it's up to you now to decide what works for you, what is realistic for you, and make sure that all your actions and activities tally to ensure that you are able to realize that revenue as much as possible. This is just an example, but it can also reflect on other people like me whose fees might be a lot higher than this. For example, I might choose that on a daily basis, especially for the fact that I don't even live in Nigeria, that my fees on a daily basis can be, say, for example, 100,000. Now, if I'm going to talk to 2 or 3 clients every day, I expect that I'm able to generate that revenue of 100,000 on a daily basis. By the time you put that maybe by 30 days, that's about 3 million on average, which is still quite okay for someone who with my experience, and all that. So I just use that example for someone who's earning 3,000 to cite an example. So you can use that also to look at your peculiar situation and know how to. That is if you want to bill on a weekly, on an hourly basis, to make sure that you actualize your goal on a monthly basis. But again, don't forget that in Nigeria, we don't work mostly by the hour. So if you know that working by the hour is not going to be realistic, you can choose to work by the week. And it depends again on the services that you're offering. Because I know that the standard payment turnaround time is monthly. So if it is on a monthly basis, then agree with the client that, okay, if I'm going to be offering the data entry service for you, I'm going to be willing to take 50,000 per month. And if you have 2 to 3 clients or 3 to 4 clients, and you're taking 50,000 per month for whatever basic data entry you're providing for them, if you have 3, 4 clients, that's about 150 or 200,000, depending on what you think you have the capacity. But don't forget that whatever service you're going to be offering has to solve problems, has to be, value, packed. The person has to be sure that they have value for you before you can start talking about what sort of fees you will charge. The second tips I would like to give to you is to also look at another way to charge your fees, which is solely not to consider charging them based on the time, because sometimes also, if you are an expertise in a particular thing, for example, the guy who says he's a researcher, charging them per hour for the research that you go to make in a very risky community, for example, makes no sense, because the time that it costs you is not the issue. It is the expertise and the value that you give in exchange that is important. So for some services, charging per time might work, but for some other services, charging by the value that you offer to the client is what should be paramount, okay? So another way to charge is not to price solely on how long something takes or how much it costs you even to do it, right? Your services are not a commodity paid by time. They are valuable asset that you exchange, that the client exchanges money to obtain. Okay, so if somebody says, oh, there's certain information I need in Nigeria and I want you to help me find this information, it is the information that you found for them that you are asking for a fees for. It is not the number of days or hours it took you, because if the person was going to also utilize that number of days or hours, they might not get that information that you are able to utilize your expertise and maybe your connection to get. So it is mostly about your skill and expertise, or better still, your hard work. It is not about, it's not all about, it's all about the value, not always about the time expended. So the first clue I gave you is that depending on the kind of service you offer, you can choose to use the time factor. But on the contrary, the second option is to consider not to use the time option, but to consider the fact that you're solving a problem for that person. For example, somebody like me who offers travel consultancy service, I try to find opportunities for people who want to work abroad. I try to find opportunities for people who want to study abroad, for example. Now, the thing is, I cannot say because and in fact, to be honest, the kind of job that we do, it takes a lot of time before we can get one partner who can agree that they can give us slots for people who want to go to work. Sometimes it can take you 3 months, 6 months, writing hundreds of emails, trying to get HR companies who will agree to partner with you. So when the client now approaches you and he wants any of these services that you have, you cannot say that you will charge them by the hour or no, you charge them based off of the solutions that you're providing. So if it took you 3 months, for example, to be able to get that information, you can choose to charge them as high as 500K, 1 million naira equivalent to get that solution that they seek. Okay, so please have that at the back of your mind that on one side, you can use time. On the other side, you can use the solution, to the problems that you're solving. Then another tip to consider when you're choosing, when you're deciding on how much fees to charge, is to also know your expenses. So if you're starting out, you may not know for sure how much your expenses cost. But one of the things that is strongly recommended is to use a simple estimate. Now, in terms of expenses, for example, I just gave an example about me who utilizes my time. By the time I want to value my time, which as far as I'm concerned is expense, it will become really, the value would be so robust. Or let's say, for example, somebody like you who I think this will also come relative for those guys who have product-oriented business. Or let me use Elizabeth business, for example. you want to offer tutoring service in a location where you intend to start. Now, you want to factor in how much the rent of that environment will cost, even though you're not paying for the rent. But if you were going to be paying for the rent, how much would the rent be? If you were going to be paying for the blackboards, the chalks, the books, and all that, you have to factor in the cost of all of your expenses, okay? Now, I understand that most freelance or remote business have very few expenses because you don't need offices sometimes to offer the services that you offer. But some businesses actually do. Though most businesses typically just need, like for my own case, I just typically need internet and maybe laptop and maybe sometimes a marketing budget, as long as I even do my marketing organically. But then there are times when I would need to have like an ad spend where I would need to spend some money to be able to advertise. So I had to factor in all of those expenses in before I decide to want to. So for some of you who are going to be offering like tangible services, for example, the people have to come and meet you to be able to consume this service, it is very critical that you factor in all the expenses to ensure that you're pricing right. So, factoring in all the costs, sorry, I'm trying to mute someone. I think it's Israel, but how come I can't see him? Okay. Israel, please mute your mic. I can't see you on my laptop. Okay, I've seen it. Okay, so factoring in the cost of all your expenses will help give you some clarity as to what to charge. You want to make sure that by all means, you're able to count. Even the Bible says you should count all the costs, basically. Then this one also is a comparison between charging by the hour or by the time, by the week or the month, as against charging a flat fee. And I think I also mentioned in the second tip that whenever possible, that you should not necessarily use the time, okay? But it depends again still on the kind of service that you're offering, okay? So whenever possible, if you charge a flat fee as against a time-based fee, in some cases, there are a couple reasons why you should do so. So charging by the hour doesn't make sense all the time. If you provide your clients with amazing work and you solve a problem for them, it doesn't usually matter how long it takes you. What is important is the quality of work that you do. I think we've mentioned that before. So this is just us trying to compare charging by the timing and charging, a flat fee. So charging by the hour doesn't incentivize your efficient works. Sometimes, in some cases, it doesn't, okay? So as you continue to do certain tasks, you will also be able to find faster ways to do them more efficiently. So for example, for somebody like me or somebody like the researcher who does this research all the time, the fact that you've done this for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years means that you're going to be able to find a better or efficient or less time spent to be able to do that research. So in that case, if your fees have always been based on the time, even when you have found an efficient way to do this thing, it means that you're going to be shortchanging yourself or punishing yourself for finding a more efficient way to do it simply because you still insist that your rates are going to be time-based. So you want to make sure that you're charging a flat rate that enables your client to view your work as a valuable asset or like something that has provided a solution for them rather than viewing, your time as a commodity. So you don't want people to say they're just paying for your time rather than paying for the value that you've offered. So there are two circumstances why you should also recommend or why you should consider charging per time. Don't forget that I had mentioned in the very beginning that these are all options that you can choose based off of what works for you. But from this argument, we're making it clear that charging based off of the problems you solve and the solution you provide is a bit more ideal than charging based on time. But there are some exceptions where you can also charge mostly based on time. So if the client, for example, is unsure what they need and can't give you a detailed work scope, like they cannot tell you exactly what they're looking for. In this case, it is impossible for you to predict how long it will take you. And since the client isn't sure, so charging them as time goes on would help you both get clarity. So in that way, if it takes longer time than normal, it means that you're not losing. But because if you charge a flat rate and the job or the assignment, for example, maybe for the research, for example, now takes more than 3 to 6 months to complete, you'll find that if you've already charged the person, say, for example, $1,000 or $2,000, you'll find that you're not able to change that anymore. But the job has taken you longer time. you are meant to repeat going to the site more time, you're spending more expenses, but you have charged, a flat rate. So one of the times when you should not charge a flat rate is when you do not have clarity of the scope of work, and you do not know the duration of time that the job will take. The second time you also want to charge based on time is when, also, like I said earlier on, you do not know when the job ends, okay? You do not know, there's no estimation, there is no, you cannot close, it's not a closed-ended work. So you want to make sure that you are charging based on time, because it will be more profitable in the long run. That way, the client keeps paying and paying until the job, is satisfactorily delivered. So one of the things you must also be sure about is to be sure to have a predictable income if you're a freelancer or if you are a startup entrepreneur. Make sure that you try to get your clients to stay with you. Any existing client that you already have, make sure that you find ways to make sure that they continue to be recurring clients. So if, for example, you've done anything for them and you think that they would be needing that thing often and often, do whatever it is you can, especially with your customer service, to make sure that these clients continue to come back. That way, you have a retainer relationship with them, and it's a gold mine. And that way, if you have 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 retainer clients, you are sure to have a predictable level of income. But if you do not, you're going to be like I said earlier, the risk with freelancing is the risk with freelancing is that you just keep looking for new clients, and it's very unpredictable. It's like going to the market every day and not being sure how much you're going to sell or how much you're going to make. So do everything to keep your existing client, as it makes your income a bit more predictable. So as you determine what services you will offer, try to package them in a way that meets a need that a client would have on a weekly, on a monthly recurring basis. One of the things that you should notice is that even if you have a primary service, right, there are times when you need to create other secondary service. For example, if you're a web designer, after you design the website for the person, it is important for you to create some other service, maybe like a website maintenance, or do something else that would keep the client paying you a recurring fees. If not, you might find that after you deliver for the clients, that's it. And then you don't have any business with the client, and so you don't make any more money from the client. So if you are also, say, for example, who else? Just find something else that you need to do to consistently take revenue from the client. So on the final note, it's essential to know how much you need to make in your freelancing business on an hourly, daily, weekly, monthly, or even yearly basis, because as with anything, if you don't know where you want to be, you will never get there. So be sure to count the cost also, especially your expenses, and be sure that the fees will make your business profitable and sustainable too. Be sure that, but more than anything else, have a yearly income target and work every minute to actualize that target. That's why I talk about challenges. Always try to challenge yourself every day to ensure that you're making baby steps towards achieving your revenue goal. So it makes a lot of sense to have a target as to how much you will make at the end of every year. So this is the end of my presentation. This timing goes off now in a minute. When it goes off, just click back on the link. I will take questions, I will take observations, and then we will close for the day. But basically, this is the end of my presentation. So just click back on the link as it goes off, and we will come back and take questions. We will take observations. And if you have any concern concerning how you should charge,